All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to finish off the industrialization era here in the U.S. history class. The reason why we're doing this is because when we come back from spring break, I want to start off with World War One. Okay, so this lesson is going to be kind of long. It's going to be jam-packed with a lot of information, so just keep that in mind, okay? And hopefully you understand why I'm doing this, okay? So let's go ahead and start with the objective. So we're going to analyze the impact of political bosses, what they had politically and on their voters. We're going to see what they did. We're going to examine the lengths of the Jim Crow laws, how far they went to basically stop not only African Americans from voting, but also from being with other people, which would happen to be white people. You're going to see how the laws they use to separate the two. And then we're going to create an argument on whether separate but equal, there's a misprint there, how is it like fair or not fair? So separate but equal. We're going to get into that a little bit more, okay, a little bit later. So let's go ahead and go to the warm-up picture. All right, so let me move this little timer thing to the side here. The first question asks you to analyze the picture, what's going on, okay? So look at the sentence on the bottom, and that should really help you out with this first question. The second question asks you to look at the white guy, the guy with the hat there, standing up. Look at his facial expression. How would you interpret that? Does he look happy, sad, things like that? To you, how does it look? Okay. And then the third question basically makes you give a prediction. Okay. Because the thing is, there are 12 Philadelphias. Again, if you read at the very bottom, it says in Philadelphia. The thing is, there's 12 of them in our country. There's one in New Mexico. There's 4 of them in the north and 7 in the south. So my question is to you, which one do you think this takes place in? The north, the south, or that one in the west? Which one do you think? And then why do you think it's that one? Okay. So again, I'm not looking for a specific, the Philadelphia, Tennessee, or the Philadelphia, Mississippi. I'm not asking that. Just asking one to know if you think it's the one in the north, the south, or the west. Okay. So make a prediction, write it out. Okay. And once you're finished with those 3 questions, get ready because we're going to the notes in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the thing. Like we've mentioned in previous classes, when the immigrants came to the country, a lot of them went to the cities, right? Now, the thing is, cities didn't really expand too much out. They only went to a certain depth, and then they started building higher buildings, So the thing is, a lot of these immigrants lived in cramped apartments. And because they were making so little money, sometimes they had to be in there with like maybe 2 families. There might be 3 whole families inside of one apartment. So it was pretty cramped. And the thing is, a lot of wealthy and middle class people who used to live in the cities now moved out. They moved to the suburbs. And they basically were blaming everything on the immigrants, saying, oh my God, crime has gone up. It's so bad now that these immigrants are here. In reality, it didn't really change all that much. But the thing is, again, there was crime in the cities, absolutely, before and after these immigrants came in. But the thing is, these people who were wealthy, who were middle class, they heard stuff. Oh, I heard an immigrant killed somebody, and oh, it's so bad. That was so bad down there. So stuff like that. They blamed alcoholism on the immigrants. It's like, no, there was alcohol. There was alcoholics before These guys came, there's alcoholics afterwards, so you can't blame it all on them. The inadequate sewage disposal. The sewage lines were pretty bad, you know. And because the sewer lines were bad, the drinking water got bad. Right? And then because everyone was so cramped in together, not just at the home, but at work and in the streets and stuff like that, that disease spread like crazy. Typhoid, cholera, fever, anything that was basically contagious. If one person got it, it spread through the apartments and the building and at work, and it just spread throughout the city. Okay. The thing is, a lot of these immigrants came in thinking that they're going to get a good job, they're going to be able to have a home, things like that, but they didn't think that they'd be living in this hardship. So the thing is, there's this political group, this people started getting up and going, you know what? We should use that anger from the immigrants and to help us get into politics, help us get, elected to being like mayor and senator and governor and things like that. So what they did is they basically told these immigrants, hey, if I'm elected, I'm going to help you get a better job. I'm going to make the conditions better. I'm going to make the housing better. Your heat's out in your place. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. Make sure those landlord fixes that. The police, you should not be scared of the police. They're there to protect you. So we're going to make sure that the cops do that. But we can't do it if you don't vote for us. So there was a lot of newly arrived immigrants who were just like, what do we got to lose? These guys, yeah, they all promise this and that. But these guys are saying they're going to do all this stuff that we know is a problem. We have nothing to lose. We really don't. It seems like it can't get any worse. So let's do it. So when these immigrants went to go vote, they voted for these bosses. And what happened is these bosses actually didn't do everything they said they were going to do, but they did make the life a little bit easier on the immigrants. The living conditions improved, the working conditions improved. It did not get like perfect by any means of the word, but it did get a little better, and the immigrants really appreciated it. Because again, anything is better than what they were living before. So they appreciated that improvement. And these political bosses, they liked it too. Not because they were helping out, but because they had control of the city finances, the state finances, and stuff like that. So they started kind of lining up their pockets with, with money and stuff like that. What they would do is take bribes on construction jobs for building streets, sewers, and just straight up buildings. What they would do is, let's say one guy said, I can make this building for $1,000. Another one says, I can make it for $2,000, but I'll give you $500 cash. That's a bribe. And so the guys would be like, okay, well, I'll take that $500. Here's your, you are going to be signed up to make this building for $2,000. Well, the other person's like, well, I said I'd do it for $1,000. Why are you giving it to them? Because they got a kickback. They got a bribe. And then what these guys would do would also put their friends in position for different places. Utilities, railroad, waterworks, power system. They put their friends in charge, and they would basically tell their friends, you do what I tell you. Okay, I got you this nice, comfy job. And when I tell you to do something, you do it. Okay. One of the most corrupt was this guy right here. His name was William M. Boss Tweed. He was one of the most corrupt people. And he ended up going to jail because of his embezzlement and bribes and some of that in 1874. In Kansas City, Missouri, there was a couple of brothers who ran the city and the state politics for 40 years. Okay. Now, the thing is, there was a lot of wealthy people, a lot of upper class people who saw these political bosses as, oh, they're corrupt. They're just like everyone else in the government. They take kickbacks. They take bribes. They're corrupt. And to a lot of the immigrants whose lives got a little bit better, they were like, well, but they did something. They did something to help the people, us. They may not have helped you, but they made our lives at least a little bit better. What did you guys do? What were the politicians before them? What did they do for us? Absolutely nothing. So, yeah. So some people liked them, some people didn't. Okay? So, now knowing what you know, do you think the political machines and the political bosses were a good thing or a bad thing? How would you justify it? So again, yes, they did take bribes. They did use their position of power to make themselves powerful, make themselves money. But they also did stuff for some of the people. You know, made the living conditions better, made the working conditions better. You know, again, not completely 100% better, but enough, just enough for the people to realize something's being done and it's better than it was before. So where would you weigh it out? Are they a good thing or bad thing? Okay, so pause the video, write your response, but we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So the next big thing that happened was the election of 1896. William Jennings Bryan, which is right there, the picture of him, went against William McKinley. Okay. Thing is, William Jennings Bryan was very skeptical about big business. He's like, these guys are being too big. They own everything and everybody. They're becoming monopolies. They're taking advantage of the workers. Landlords are taking advantage of the people. So he went around and during his campaign, he gave 600 speeches in 14 weeks. You broke it down. That's basically 6 speeches a day. He'll go on train, stop here, give a speech, move on. Next stop, give a speech, move on. And the thing was, he actually shook so many hands that his own hand at the very end was like swelled up. Because again, he was shaking people's hands all over every day. Again, 6 times a day, stopping off and meeting people. So, like I said, he was going after businesses saying that they were corrupt, they were taking advantage of people. McKinley, on the other hand, was more like, you know what, these guys, they're making the country move. Other countries around the world are buying stuff from us. Our oil that our country is making is being bought all around the world. We're getting money. So let them be. So a lot of businesses, because McKinley's saying that, supported him. And in fact, they even told the workers, the business owners told the workers, if Bryant wins, you might lose your job. Your wages might go down even more. Now, this is scary because a lot of people needed jobs, and they couldn't just pack up and move to another state. They didn't have the money. And so it's kind of like right now, how during this pandemic, some people don't have jobs. So there's other people looking for jobs and they'll take whatever, And there's even one case that I read about that one boss told his workers, if Bryant wins, don't even bother coming to work the next day. Okay? Just like that. Just like that. And that's the thing. It would be like if this past election, if your boss, if you work somewhere and your boss says, if Trump loses, don't bother coming to work. You're going to lose your job. Every one of you guys, even though you may not have voted for Trump or you did vote for Trump, doesn't matter. He lost, so you lose your job because he lost. It's something that's out of your hands, but the boss basically made sure that the workers knew, hey, if he loses, you're SOL'd. And the thing is, nowadays, that's highly illegal. No boss can tell you, no church, nobody can tell you, how to vote, and things like that. They can suggest all they want, but they can't threaten your job. They can't tell you who to vote for because it's your vote. You should be able to vote for anybody and whoever you want to. Okay? So as you guys probably figured out, McKinley won. So here's the thing. Now we're going to look at the African Americans' lives, especially the ones from the South. Now the thing is, a lot of their biggest thing was to stop African Americans from voting. Okay. Now under the 15th Amendment, it says no one can be denied the right to vote based off race, color, or previous condition of servitude. However, it doesn't state that the government, the state, or the federal government can't require that citizens be literate or own property in order to vote. So it's a loophole, and they use that kind of stuff. Now again, it wasn't just African Americans; it was also poor white people. Poor white farmers in the South were targeted mainly because they supported this thing called the populist movement. It was this idea that farmers should get more political powers, not big plantation owners, small farm owners, and that they should get laws that help them out. So the big plantation owners, these millionaire guys who own, miles and miles of land, are basically like, who are you to try to come up? Try to be at my level. No. We're going to keep you down there. So they felt the brunt of the rich white people holding them down. So yeah, that's why I'm saying a lot of not every single white person in the South at this time hated African Americans. They didn't. Okay? A lot of poor white farmers, they understood how these upper rich white people were holding them down, and why they were. Again, to protect their power, protect their interest, So they had an inkling, they had an idea, but they didn't experience the racism that the African Americans suffered. So the thing that the Southern politicians did to try to stop African Americans from voting was, the first thing was a poll tax. They basically charged $2, to all citizens to register to vote. Thing is, nowadays we see it as $2. It's nothing. You find that in your couch. Back then, $2 was a lot of money, and that was just to register to vote. So a lot of poor farmers were like, I can't spend that much money. I have to be prepared for, like, if one of the kids gets sick, or we need some type of equipment, or something happens. We need that money for that. Okay, so that was an issue. That was a big problem. And let's say, just by chance, there are some African American who pays the $2. They go to register to vote. It's like, fine. Now you have to take a literacy test. So the state requires that the voters have to be able to read or understand the state's constitution. So if a white person came up for the literacy test, they might be asked a question like, tell me a law. And a person would be like, well, you can't kill. Good enough. And here's your ballot. You can go vote. If an African American came to vote, they would tell them something like, recite the state's preamble. Recite our country's constitution. The preamble of the Constitution. What does the law say about horses in town? And you'd say it word for word. So they would give them very difficult parts to remember. And it wouldn't be the same thing. They would constantly change it up. Who's going to remember a law about a horse in town? No one's going to know that law, especially word for word. So that's the kind of stuff they did. But karma is an interesting thing, because some white people fell through the cracks. There were some white people who said, well, I can't pay the $2, you know, or I refuse to pay the $2. No, I'm not going to pay nothing. So that kind of hurt them. The other thing was the literacy test. There were some white people who could not read. Just like there was African Americans who couldn't read. Remember, only 40% actually went to school. The other 60% didn't. So there was a lot of African Americans who couldn't read, and then there was also a lot of white people who couldn't read. And some of them didn't know laws. They would ask them, like, tell me a law. They might say something like, look both ways before crossing the road. That's not a law. That's more like common sense. There's not a law that says you have to look both ways before crossing the road. So, yeah. So what they did was this. To make sure that white people could vote and African Americans couldn't, what they said was the grandfather clause, which was, if your grandfather voted, you can vote. There's a lot of African Americans who at this time, their grandfather was a slave. So of course he couldn't vote. Same thing with their dad, he couldn't vote. So let's say here's a person, right? Their grandfather's here, he didn't vote because he was a slave. The father couldn't vote because, again, he was a slave. So the next person, the person's son, they might look at over here the grandfather and, oh, he can't vote because he was a slave. So he never voted, so you can't vote. And then the next one, and see how the line goes? That's what they did. That was their hope, to keep African Americans from voting. Is that all these people couldn't vote, so it just continues and continues and continues all the way through. So again, that's the kind of stuff they did to stop them from voting. Also, what's growing rampant in the South is segregation, the separation of whites and blacks. Whites here, blacks here, they have this, they have that, and they try to do it for every little thing. They try to separate white and blacks, white and blacks, white and blacks. So the thing they did was create Jim Crow laws. These are basically laws that enforce segregation. I'm going to show you a little bit, just a tiny inkling of the laws that were Jim Crow laws in different states. Okay, after this slide. 1883, the Supreme Court said that the 14th Amendment said that no state could deny citizens equal protection under law. Only state actions were subject to challenge. So again, states could not deny people equal protection. However, it does not say anything about private businesses, private organizations. So hotels, railroads, theaters, restaurants, things like that, they could segregate all they want because a business has their own rules. Right? Just like right now, if you do not wear your mask, a business can refuse to give you service. And they tell you right in the front window and stuff like that, right at the door, you wear a mask, it's mandatory, things like that. They say it there. So you have to wear it if you want to do shopping there. If you don't, they can refuse you. They can just tell you straight up leave. Same thing back then. They didn't have to allow African Americans in if they didn't want to. So what happened is, this goes up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court case of Plessy versus Ferguson, and in 1896, the Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal is constitutional. So no one's breaking any laws if they're separate, whites and blacks, but they're equal. And here's what that means. So let's look at a white school and black school. At a white school, they would get a brand new facility, brand new building. A black school will get like a shack. Well, both of them are buildings, right? The books, the white school will get brand new books, the newest editions, things like that. The black schools would get the torn up books, the ones written on, pages ripped out, things like that. They got books, both of them. The white school would get brand new desks, right? Brand new desk, fresh, clean, everything. The black school would get broken down, desks, parts missing, written on, and stuff like that. They both got desks. So that's how the Southern people found a way around it. Separate but equal. Well, they both have buildings, they both have books, they both have desks. It's the condition of it. So something like the picture right here, the two water fountains. One looks very pristine, looks very beautiful, and the other one's like you have the pump and it's coming straight from the ground. So they would say, well, they're both giving water, that's both a water fountain. So they're equal. And as you can see, there's a big difference between the two. So here are some Jim Crow laws, just really quickly. I put only just 3 states, and I didn't put everything, okay? Because again, there's so much, and if you want to look at it, by all means, go to Google, type in Jim Crow laws, and there's a lot of websites devoted to it. And they break it down by states and stuff like that. But really quickly, Mississippi, education has to be white school and black school. All right, even promoting the idea. So if you write in paper in any which way, whether it's a flyer, a research paper for school, as a public notice, it doesn't matter. If you write it down on paper and you distribute it, saying that white people and black people are equal, saying, hey, we bleed the same blood, we breathe the same air, stuff like that, you could face a $500 fine. And in those days, that was huge fine. You could be in prison up to 6 months, or you can get both, fined and go to prison. Interracial marriage between a white person and a black person, doesn't matter if a guy or girl. If there's a mix, it would not be recognized. And if you did have part black in you, if it was more than 1/8, so like a half, a quarter, an eighth, you could not marry a white person. Okay. Now, if you had like a 16th or 1/32, okay, but you would honestly kind of still be like, oh, she married, part black man. It'd be that kind of stuff. Okay. Hospital entrances, hey, white people come to the front, black people side doors, the back door, wherever. Prisons, same thing. They could not eat or sleep in the same area. They had to be separated. Texas, the libraries, what they would do is like, hey, they did not deny black people, the ability to go to the library, but they had to go through a separate entrance, and they had to basically say, I want this book in advance, so that the white people can have a chance to get it. And if after a week or two, if no one gets it, then yeah, you can have it. But first, these guys had to have a chance to get it. In Georgia, barbers. It doesn't matter if you're white or if you're a male or female. If you're black, you cannot cut the hair of a white woman. And this is the one that really I was just dumbfounded with. Being buried. You're dead. Who gives a care who you're next to? But in Georgia at this time, they cared so much that you cannot be buried in the same ground as a white person if you're black. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's like they're dead. What are they going to do? Jump out of their graves and go, oh no, you got to bury me somewhere else. There's a black guy right here. I can't rest in peace with the black guy right next to me. They're dead. Who cares? But apparently they did back then, and yeah. So here's your next question: who do you feel did the most damage to America? The Southern politicians who made those Jim Crow laws, the Supreme Court that made the Plessy versus Ferguson law, basically saying separate but equal is okay? Or do you think it was a businessman who threatened the workers on who to vote for? Who do you think did the most damage to America? And why do you feel this? Okay, so pause the video, give your response, but we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we come to the exit ticket. Remember, just pick one of these questions. The first one says, do you think the political bosses actually cared about their voters? Or do you think they just kept them happy so that they could stay in power? So which one do you think? And then why? The next one says, which one do you think was worse for African Americans? The Jim Crow laws, the one that separated black people from white people? Or do you think it was the poll tax and the literacy test to stop them from voting? So which one do you think is worse and why for African Americans? The third question is, I put this down because I want to see how much, if you guys want to challenge. Explain how separate but equal is not fair, but also give 2 examples. Don't copy mine with the school, the desks, the books, the buildings. Don't copy mine. Think of your own. Where's 2 examples of separate but equal, but they're not really equal? The condition of one is better, a lot better than the other one. So one's new, the other one's really old, things like that. So that one's a challenge more for those of you guys who want to take a challenge. Okay. So once you're finished with this exit ticket, you're done for the day. Okay. You guys, hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these lessons, that you really got something out of this. Okay. So that's it. You guys have a good day. You take care. You be safe. All right.